long for revival, but you then define it, which I really appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
And you say it's a season of breakthroughs in word, deed, and power that ushers in a new normal of kingdom experience and fruitfulness.
Yeah.
Now, hearing that, you have those three different categories: word, deed, and power. Why is it so important for us to understand it as breakthroughs in word, deed, and power? And why should we see it as a new normal? Now, I know I don't want to take away from the book because you guys unpack that over several chapters, but
Mm-hmm.
just briefly, why, I mean, really even why that definition in word, deed, and power and ushering in a new normal? Why is that so important for us to understand?
Yeah, because it brings in a balance. The word deed and power, and so the biblical basis for that would be around Romans 15, where when Paul talked about fully proclaiming the gospel,
Mm-hmm.
there's a part where that full proclamation meant some geography that he was walking around in the text, but also it gives a qualitative picture of that. And you'll see Paul, as he talks about his own ministry, he says he does it in word, deed, and power. And you'll see that language showing up there. And we have also found that it sort of came out of our way of trying to invite people into a wider view of witness when we were in San Diego together. Just to say, like, witness isn't just word, it's word, deed, and power, and holding that together created more space for people to be involved in witness rather than it having to look a particular way. So why that's important with revival, particularly with word, deed, and power, folks, is that if most of us identify more deeply with one of the circles,
Right.
maybe two, but we tend to identify more with one, and left to our own devices, we will judge the other circles. So if you're a word-centered person, you look at a deed person who might be involved in justice or compassion, right? You look at them and you're like, well, they just seem angry. Why aren't they like staying in the scriptures? Or, you're looking at the power people and they're just looking like they're shaking and baking. They're rolling around the aisles. But how are they grounded in the word? Let's stay grounded in the word. Whereas if you're like a deed person and you're looking at a word person and you're like, hey, you just look like you're so heavenly minded that you're no earthly good. Why not get in the dirt and really love people? Or they'll look at the power people. It's like, that's great that you're doing that in your closet, but hey, there's a lot of needs to meet today. And on the power side, right? Like you look at the word person and you're going like, they have a form of godliness that seems to deny his power, right? Or power people look at the deed folks and go, there's the joy of the Lord, experience him, don't worry about all the stuff that's happening in the world today. And there's a way that because of our either temperament or spiritual gifting, that there's a way that we'll look down on the other circles. Mm-hmm. And we just found that we need a unifying concept to say, actually, no matter where you are on this grid of the three circles, your invitation is always to come to the center where they overlap and to do that in love. And then when we looked at histories of revival, that often revivals will enter in one circle, but as they tend to mature, often, much of the time, you'll find them sort of incorporating the other pieces as they go along, right? Where there's the Wesleyans with the Methodists, right? There's a word component to this strong thing, but then so the deed part, they really focused on the miners. They, like actual coal miners, right? The actual blue collar, not chillers. Right. Yeah. And Wesley himself had a little more disdain for the elite, really wanted to kind of lift up those who were more marginalized. But also then things were happening in parts of his community where in prayer, they were experiencing God. There were things that were happening in the experience in the power circle. And you can see that you might start with one, like the Methodists starting with word, or maybe like the Franciscans starting more with the deed and loving the poor, but seeing how that plays out in the communal Bible study and how that also played out into these powerful ecstatic experiences, that there was something about, you could start one way, but as it matured, it sort of had a way of bringing people in. And of course, there's the bad, and sort of that's what we're trying to guard is there are revivals that run into just halt or skid out because they don't know how to welcome the other circles. And they sort of burn out or spin out or don't come to where it could have gone. And so we are trying to find a way to welcome and say, like, it doesn't have to look a particular way, but the invitation is always to come to the middle where word, deed, and power are overlapping in love.